Hi, everyone. This is Lisa Rosenthal from Reproductive Medicine Associates of Connecticut. We're really thrilled to have you here tonight. We're going to be talking about Vegas baby and the high cost of infertility. So we're thrilled to have you, and we're also thrilled to have three of the major players that were involved with the making of Vegas baby. The IVF contest was Lisa Stark's brainchild. Lisa is a communications professional with 2 decades of experience in television news and senior leadership positions as Vice President of Communications at Nevada Cancer Institute and Senior Communications Executive at Share Fertility Institute, a national network of fertility clinics. In 2016, Lisa launched her own healthcare media consulting firm, Stark Media Strategies. Amanda Michaeli, is an Oscar-nominated filmmaker and the director of the documentary Vegas Baby, which premiered at the Tribeca Film Festival before its release on Netflix this summer. Amanda was inspired to make a film about the emotional and financial costs of fertility treatment in the midst of her own 5-year struggle to start a family. Amanda has worked on many other documentaries for HBO, PBS, and ESPN as a director, producer, and cinematographer. And lastly, we have Linda Vigna-Piano, who is the Director of Clinical Operations East Coast for IntegraMed Fertility. She's been working in the field of fertility and infertility for almost 20 years. She started out working with Jeffrey Scher, MD at CIRM, Las Vegas, and grew many of the CIRM practices and has grown as the company and now works with many fertility clinics under IntegraMed Fertility. She's from Las Vegas, Nevada. Yes, people are really from there. And received her bachelor's degree in nursing from University of Nevada, Reno. Linda is passionate about the world of IVF and creating families, and delights in working intimately with the individuals, couples who are seeking to make a family. She has made a large impact in the YouTube world as Nurse Linda, and has many videos ranging from injection instructions to topics often asked about regarding IVF. So thank you, you beautiful women, for joining us here tonight.
Thank you.
Yes, as patient advocate here at Reproductive Medicine Associates of Connecticut, we really are thrilled to be able to speak directly to you. Big call out to Jay Palumbo, who made all of the introductions. She's a dear friend and really was a big help here. So for those watching and viewing, please post questions at any time. We're going to try to either interrupt and ask your questions or save some time at the end for question and answer period. So, Lisa, we're going to really start with you. Where did the idea of the IVF contest come from?
Well, Dr. Scher and the Scher Institute historically have been very philanthropic. Dating back to the beginning of his career, it has always been a big part of who he is. So he has been donating cycles, for 10, 20 years, long before I came into the picture. What I tried to do was to bring a public face to some of this philanthropic work, not only to help enhance his practice and his reputation, but also just to elevate the dialogue, because I'm a big believer that the more it's out there, the more people are talking about it, the more good that can come, both for the individual and for the larger cause. So, originally we had an essay contest, and that was how the donation was awarded. And then, with my background in video, I thought, wow, it would be great to really take some of these powerful stories, put them on video, and what better way to get people to pay attention to infertility, because you cannot watch these videos and not be moved by them. So that was really the genesis of the idea and why we brought people's stories to video.
Wonderful. Thank you for such a comprehensive answer. So it's fair to say that some of the intention of this contest was to elevate awareness of infertility as a reproductive disease, to get people talking about it, and to put, as you said so beautifully, to put names and faces together. Is that right?
That was the primary driving force to bring it out of the closet, because everyone knows that infertility is something that is whispered about, talked about. I went through it personally, and I didn't have a network of support and people to connect with. And I think by, opening up, it not only helps the individual, but it also just elevates the greater good of the cause of infertility.
So, how did that lead to the documentary being created? And Amanda, if you wouldn't mind taking that and just talking a little bit about how you were brought into the project and then how the project was funded, what the response was, if you wouldn't mind taking that for us.
Sure. Well, I wasn't brought into the project. I brought the documentary into being. I was inducted into the subject matter through my own personal experience, which I think a lot of people can relate to. This is not something that I thought about before it happened to me. And I think that's one of the unfortunate things about infertility, is that until you've walked in those shoes, it's very hard to understand. And that is actually what documentaries are perfect for, in terms of creating empathy and understanding an experience that you haven't been through before. So I had gone through one round of IVF that failed, and I was really kind of ill-informed about the process and was kind of shocked at my own ignorance. And so I started thinking, this could be really ripe fodder for a documentary, but how would I make that story interesting and compelling? Because I don't like watching educational films with talking heads, people lecturing at me. I like films that are more compelling and controversial and character driven. So I came across an article about these contests that were happening, not just at the Schur Institute, but at other fertility clinics. And it was a pretty controversial article. And I thought, well, this is a really interesting conversation starter. I thought that it would be very hard to get access to a clinic, and to their credit, Lisa and Dr. Schur were incredibly open to me. I just rang them up, kind of expecting to get the cold shoulder, and Lisa was like, "We have nothing to hide, come on down." And I was like, "Wait, what? Like, really?" so really, it was a wholly independent project that started out of my own experience and was allowed to flourish by their courage to allow me to come in as an outsider. And, they gave me complete editorial control to come and make a film and explore what I wanted to explore. So that was the genesis of the project.
Wonderful. Hey, Linda, how did it feel to have cameras? I mean, we'll go back to the contest and all of that in just a moment. And I do want to get back, Amanda, to the funding and the response to doing a project, a documentary on infertility. So Linda, how did it feel to have cameras in your practice, in your office, and following you around?
Well, it wasn't the first time that we've had a couple of people before Amanda interested in more like reality-based shows that are really popular right now. But it's hard because you can't control the outcome. So you don't know what you're filming next. There is inherent drama in what we do for sure. And just not a lot of people are willing to talk about what's going on with them. So there's still a lot of secrets. So it never really came to fruition. And Amanda came around, and she really didn't describe exactly what this project was going to be necessarily. I don't think she necessarily knew it was going to grow, and she had an idea. And so it was, you didn't know if it was going to be real. I really didn't know if this was just going to be something else that would fall off, or something else that would grow into something that I was really proud of this project. So yeah, it was pretty natural. Amanda's awesome. So she was great to have around. She really had sensitivity to everything we were doing. So, she gave a few pointers on what to do. Otherwise, she just let us be us. So it really was easy.
So you got used to her enough that it didn't really inhibit or change how you were speaking or what you were saying or any of those kind of things?
Right. It was certainly much easier when we were just allowed to be us. It was more difficult when I had to formulate myself to follow some basic documentary making rules. That was difficult. But just to be me was easy. So, and she was fine with that.
You mean the interviews.
Yeah.
Okay. So going back, I just want to finish up that piece of it. What was it like, Amanda, trying to find people who thought this project was worthy of supporting you financially?
Well, it's interesting. When I first conceived of the idea, I thought it was a no-brainer. I thought this is a timely social issue. There's inherent drama. I hate referring to real people as characters, but the film had great characters. There was a lot of interest in it. I thought it was a no-brainer to get funding, both from broadcasters and from nonprofits that support social issue documentaries. But to be honest, I couldn't have been more wrong. And I actually think Lisa Stark had clued me into this early on because she had a really strong background working with cancer patients and the media. And she had already seen a real difference in terms of the response of the media to cancer stories versus infertility stories. And I imagine a lot of people listening today, it might not be a huge surprise to them that sometimes the empathy doesn't run very deep. People don't see this as an important problem with a capital I. They see it as, in the worst case scenario, the responses that I got was that it seemed like a small subset of people that were kind of selfish and pursuing something for their own elective gain. And so I was really all the more emboldened to make the film because it was clear to me that it was touching a nerve. Because here I was traveling across the country and meeting people who were going through this. And not only that, but every time I would talk about the film, people would say, "Oh, I know my sister's going through that, or my cousin's going through that, or my niece is going through that. And it's so horrible. I don't know what to do to support this person." And I'd say, so certainly it was in the zeitgeist and it was something that a lot of people were experiencing, but the people in power had not seen it as something important enough to support. So that as an independent filmmaker, even though it was hard for me, it was all the more like adding fuel to the flame that I felt like this was a project that needed to be made.
And it's interesting because as infertility hits 1 in 8 couples, it's actually more common even than breast cancer for women, which is 1 in 9 women. And I remember I've been in this field. I was trying to get pregnant 30 years ago. I remember when the AIDS epidemic was at its height, and AIDS was talked about more freely with less stigma than infertility was, and it still continues to this day with cancer. It's truly an amazing thing, especially since we're talking about reproductive disease. We're not talking about a lifestyle choice. We're talking about reproductive disease, which often has ramifications that go way past whether or not you can have a child. So thank you. Lisa, I'm going to hand it back to you. How were the individuals selected? I loved that whole part, of listening to Jay and the other judges in in the wonderful documentary. But was there specific criteria that you were looking for, specific criteria that you were looking to not see?
Well, this is a process that really went through intense scrutiny internally, first of all. And Amanda, for storytelling purposes, couldn't necessarily get into the details of how the whole contest and the winners were selected. But I can tell you that the way we would do it is so everybody would submit their videos. Is there a problem with my sound?
No.
No. Okay.
No. Thank you, Lisa.
So people would submit their videos, and then we would have a several tiered judging process. So all of the sheer staff throughout the country would watch all of the videos. Then there would also be voting on the internet, and we would combine those two processes to select the 10 finalists. And then when we got down to those 10 finalists, we chose external judges to come in, watch the videos, and make the unbearable choices that they had to make.
Sure.
I think that we, Shear Institute, we wanted to stay away from the judging process. So we felt like our role was to be a conduit to get the stories out there, to get the stories in front of as many eyeballs as we could. But as far as picking winners, we wanted to steer clear of that. We also very carefully did not give the judges instructions. So it was, not the best produced video necessarily, not the saddest story necessarily. We purposely left that somewhat ambiguous to let them decide and let the chosen couples evolve naturally. Having said that, we know that this is an inherently flawed process, that there is absolutely no fair way to pick winners of these stories, but we felt like the greater good outweighed the inherent flaws in the judging and the selection.
That makes sense. Thanks, Lisa. So these were really highly personal and highly heartwarming, heartbreaking, heart-wrenching videos to watch. In terms of that, how did you feel about capturing those, Amanda? You know, you.
Well, I think in a way it's like we're already conflating the contest and the film, and they are two very different things.
Okay.
The contest was happening before the film happened, and people were capturing these videos on their own in their home living room and making these films.
Right.
I can tell you my first experience watching the films was with the videos that people made, was really emotional because I was being pulled in a million different directions. And Lisa's heard me say it before. At first, I thought this contest was absurd. You know, I just was like, "This is crazy! I can't believe people are doing this." And then it sort of sunk in that it's not that crazy because the insurance coverage situation is so dire in the United States. This is one of the most expensive countries in the world with the least amount of coverage. So the contest for me is really, it's not so much the contest that's the issue for me. It's the situation in our culture that makes the contest thrive. What makes the contest thrive is that people are desperate for these services and can't afford it. So for me as a documentarian, that was sort of my take on the contest, is that this is endemic of our culture right now in terms of reproductive medicine, and it's something that it's not interesting to me to say, is this a good or a bad thing, the contest? What I want to get at is the deeper story behind that. Yeah. But then the film, it becomes kind of meta in a way because we're making a film about people making videos and putting them on the internet, and then the film is also going to go out.
Sure.
So it was very important that as filmmakers, when we were filming with people, we had to become really embedded with them and build a lot of intimate trust. And then the film kind of took on a life of its own because the contest is over in the first 20 minutes of the film. And then we follow the winners and two of the losers throughout the course of a year and a half. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
it does. It really does answer my question. Thank you. I want to just ask Linda in terms of that. Linda, how many videos did you end up watching?
Oh, I think I watched almost all the videos.
What was that like for you?
So it wasn't markedly different. I mean, for me, I lived the life. I talked to these patients. I dealt with them daily. So to see it on video was just another format to see what I dealt with daily. And there was obviously like more production in the videos, and they cut right to the chase about what their story was. But there was, you know, daily pain, you know, daily emotions that I dealt with all the time. So the videos were just more concise of what was my life anyway. So the videos, you know, had an impact on me for probably a different reason. But I was, if lack of a better word, I was used to having to deal with this because this is what I did. This is what I do for a living.
Sure. You know, I was speaking to an author who wrote a book called Detours. Hi, Sue. I hope you're around. And all of the proceeds from her book are actually going to Resolve. And you know, when we look at these different stories, I think that people, you know, they're second nature to you. You hear it all the time. And when I was speaking to Sue today, we were talking about what the biggest fear of an infertility patient is. And Sue is a patient. I was a patient. Really, the bottom line fear is that you're going to be the one that leaves without having a baby, right? That's the bottom line fear. The truth is that if we told a patient, you're going to have to come to our practice for 3 years, you're going to have to give us a lot of money, you're going to have injections, you're going to have to go through procedures, you're going to have to cancel vacations, but at the end of 3 years, you're going to be all set. You're going to have a baby. Everybody would put in their time, their money, and their energy if they could afford it, any of those things, because infertility is incredibly expensive and not just financially. but everybody would be a little bit less fearful, I think, and a little less, if there was a guaranteed outcome. And I think one of the things, do you all agree that one of the things about infertility that is so challenging is that lack of guaranteed outcome?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, that was, I think, one of the biggest takeaways for the film for a lot of people who didn't know this subject matter, is that people just had no idea what the odds were and how much people would put on the line. So hence the title Vegas Baby becomes more meaningful than just, oh, this is a clinic in Las Vegas, but this is people gambling.
Yeah. In terms of the contest, what kind of outcome, how did you feel about the process, Linda? You watched all of these couples. There probably wasn't a single video that you watched where you thought, nope, they shouldn't have a baby. Probably not, right?
Right.
So what was difficult about watching the videos and the set, the outline of the contest for you?
In the movie, I mean, I'm pretty in the documentary. I'm pretty clear that I'm not a big fan of the contest. I'm certainly a fan of getting information out there, and I'm a fan of people sharing. And for those that do benefit, there was a lot of good that came from things, but I wasn't a fan of pinning these people against each other, and so I didn't like it. If there were, and I don't even know how many videos or contestants there were in this particular contest, but if there were 50, the way I saw it was there was 49 losers, so to speak, 49 people who were going to be just like Rosalinda was in the movie, and they had to deal with, it's over. I pinned all of this on this little chance that I had, and it's over now. And that was just one more heartbreak that I just felt like, was unnecessarily put on them because of the nature of how we pinned these people against each other. And I didn't like that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. What about you, Lisa? How did you feel about the outcome? Were there unexpected outcomes that came from the contest that you felt strongly about? Again, unexpected, not the expected outcomes, but the things you were kind of surprised at, either feelings or actual circumstances that happened.
Well, first, I just want to echo what Linda said, that obviously none of us took it lightly, the weight of the responsibility and the heaviness of the contest, and the fact that not everybody can win. That was an issue that we thought about. Every year we would re-examine it. Is this worth it? Does the good outweigh the bad? Should we do this again? Because we watched all the videos too, and we went through all of those emotions. Having been there myself, I know what that's like. So we took that responsibility very seriously. And what heartened us to keep going and to do the documentary was the response that we got from the couples who did not win. I mean, obviously the couples who won, it's easy, right? They get a baby, that's a no-brainer. But the ones who didn't win said, I told my family about this for the first time, and I never knew I had so much support. And I learned about my sister-in-law who had the same problem. And then, in the extreme example, there were a couple incidents where people saw the video of a couple and a woman gave her baby to this couple. Instead of putting it up for adoption, she gave the couple whose video she watched the baby. So it was, the big and little stories like that really heartened us to continue.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. Just letting that sink in for a minute.
Yeah, I mean, it was amazing. They had emailed us and they showed us the picture of the baby. It was a single mother who saw the video of this one couple that really spoke to her. And she, after the contest, reached out to them and said, I want to give you this baby. And
right. And I assume,
it was,
when you say gave them the baby, I assume that you mean went through adoption processes and instead of relinquishing the baby some other way for adoption. So when you saw the documentary finished, and Amanda, I know this is really, your baby. The documentary is really your baby. Um, and I know when you talk about conflating the documentary and the contest, but they are intimately related. The documentary tells the story not only of the contest, but beyond and what these couples went through. And I was lucky enough to speak to Ann Johnson. Ann and Brian, did win the contest and did end up having a child, at length. So I'm kind of interested in what each of you think of this question. And I think I'd like to start with you, Lisa, since you're up there. When you saw and I'm going to just read it out. When you saw the documentary finished, did you think that the contest accomplished what you had set out to do? And in retrospect, is there something that you would have done differently?
Well, I mean, to the first part of the question, absolutely. Not only did the contest elevate the dialogue just through the social sharing and the videos and the discussion, but then the movie took it another step further exponentially. I mean, Amanda was on Nightline, so infertility was on Nightline. So people are talking about the movie in small and large settings because of the contest. So if you go back to the original goal of elevating the dialogue, then I would say absolutely the contest has elevated the dialogue. And of course, not all of it has been positive, but it's still elevating. So I look at it still as a win in that regard. Is there anything we would have done differently? I mean, I guess you always want more people to win. I guess we would have hoped that, and we said this publicly at the time, that other clinics would have followed suit and said, you know what? Sure, there's inherently problems with the contest, but this is a good thing. This is elevating the dialogue, and couples who cannot afford treatment are getting a baby. So our hope was that other clinics would line up behind the Shear Institute and say this is a great idea and also donate more cycles. So I guess that would have been the hope.
And it is interesting. I think that when we talk about unintended outcomes, we've seen an outcropping of not-for-profits that are giving out grants, and I'm just going to put a little plug in for the Nest Egg Foundation, which is in its second year of giving out $10,000 grants to primary infertility folks. And, so it's not the only way to help couples along, but I do think that it has inspired and, as you said, elevated the conversation. Amanda, no, I'm sorry, Linda, what message do you think was delivered because of this contest, and was it different than the message that was intended, do you think?
Well, I have to agree with Lisa first. I mean, if this weren't, a big, and I'm going to use the word flashy, contest that got Amanda's attention. I mean, if this were just, as you were just speaking about, Lisa, a boring grant that was done every month, and there was always somebody who got it, she might not have come and run into us to say, wow, I really feel like I have to do a film about this. And all that has been put out there since then wouldn't be out there, right? So there's that. That's huge. Do I think there's certainly a lot more practical benefit by doing things that are markedly, more low key and being able to give out grants? And again, I have to say that there are plenty of clinics that I know I am aware of that do give out grants and benefits of cycles and treatment, but they don't do it in this flashy manner where they use, pre-marketing on Facebook and pin people against each other publicly like this. You can do that. That's one way to do it, but there are about 1,000 ways to do it also and still be able to give out the benefit of, helping out people. Certainly there's advocacy and government and getting insurance. There's all kind of roles one could play to try to improve things financially for the greater good. It was interesting when Amanda and I were marketing this in the beginning when we were doing our red carpet and all that. On the East Coast, there was one reaction to the film, I felt. And then on the West Coast, there was a little bit of a different as we did these opening nights and that. And the East Coast, which is more formal and businessy, and they loved and they talked about like the brainchild, the marketing behind this, and how great this was. When I got on the West Coast, it was different. Now, granted, we were in the Bay Area, so there was this, more hippie element of how did it affect the people, and what was the mindset of those who suffered, and and they certainly, I fit in much better on the West Coast with how I felt about it. But again, it's just two different ways to look at it, so in the end, was there a lot accomplished? Sure. Again, I'm just not a big advocate of a contest.
Well, I'm gonna lead you down that path a little bit farther, and ask, was the contest something that you were proud to participate in? Nothing like getting put on the spot, huh, Linda?
So yeah, no, so my short answer, no. It was a brainchild. Yeah, it was a brainchild. It was a brainchild of marketing. It was a great marketing. I mean, look at it from a marketing point of view. All of the marketing we received for very little funds. The people did the marketing for us. There were many, many quieter ways to benefit more individuals than this. So I think that this was a great marketing move. And so that was, to me, my view of it was that was what the big win was. Oh, and somebody got not a free baby, but somebody got a free IVF cycle out of it. And what did that really cost us? Instead of subtly doing this behind the scenes in a, I guess I'm going to say, a more respectable manner, et cetera. So yeah, there was a free cycle. Okay.
Right. Thank you, Linda. So Lisa, I'm going to ask you to only address this part. I know it may be a little hard to resist responding to what Linda said, but would you mind sharing doubts that you may have had afterwards, that you yourself had, and just kind of push aside the rest of it?
I still firmly believe that the contest in the film elevated the dialogue and ultimately did more good. Obviously, I was heartbroken for the couples who didn't win. Every year, I personally watched every single video, and it was very difficult and emotional. And I cannot, in good conscience, go against anything that Linda said. I mean, everything she said is valid and true, and I hear it. I just think that, ultimately, at the end of the day, for me, I do feel like it did more good for the general cause of infertility awareness. I would also add that if you asked any couple who did not win, how they feel about the winning couple, obviously they want it to be them, but I think that they would be okay with the other couple getting something too. I don't think it's pitting against necessarily. I just think they want it to be them. And, that's completely natural. That's understandable.
So I'm going to take a pause there. I have these two fabulous people at RMACT working with me, Justine and Dina. I don't know if there are questions coming in or comments coming in, but I do want to just thank all of our viewers and people who are viewing this for joining us here tonight, and particularly Linda and Lisa and Amanda. Amanda, I'm sure that this is kind of a challenging question in some ways. 2 years after, or a year after the movie, the documentary has been wrapped, are there parts that make you feel particularly proud of your piece? Are there pieces that you look at and you say, wow, I just really got that. That really was perfect. What a great choice, Amanda. Pat yourself on the back kind of thing.
It was like the self-esteem building. No, I think there is one scene in the film that I'm particularly proud of that it's hard to show out of context. Like, you really need to see it in context to appreciate it. So I hope people who are watching will get a chance to see the film. But it's,
by the way, wait, hold on 1 second. Let me do a little promo here. Vegas Baby is on Netflix. It is very watchable. It's very easy to find at this point. Vegas Baby on Netflix. So go
It's
ahead.
on Netflix, it's on Amazon, it's on iTunes, it's all over the place. And it's on
Okay.
PBS on October 31st.
Good to know.
The scene that I think resonates for me the most, that I'm most proud of, is the scene where Rosalinda goes into the nail salon. And it's a subtle scene. It's very much an everyday scene that I think anyone who has struggled with infertility instantly resonates with them. And it's funny because a lot of people asked me if we had set it up, and I said, no, we didn't set up anything in the film. It's all just observed as a fly on the wall. But essentially what it is, she's getting her toes done and she's getting blue toenail polish because she wants a boy. She's on her way to Vegas, about to do her cycle. And the women next to her start chatting. And there's a woman a couple chairs down who's clearly like 7 or 8 months pregnant. And just the conversation that these women have about, oh, and my friend had triplets, and oh, my friend was 41 and she had a surprise baby. And, it's stuff that they didn't mean any harm by. And it's the kind of conversations that you hear all the time at the hairdresser or the nail salon. And poor Rosalinda is just, her face is just ashen because she wants this so badly. And here's this reminder right next to her, in the chair next to her, that it's so easy for everybody else. And it's a very subtle scene, but it's one that I'm really proud of because it just unfolded in front of us naturally. And it was one of those things that I think, again, it would be hard to explain that without seeing it.
Well, I'm looking off screen because our team here is absolutely so touched by that. And you're so right. These little moments in our life, and really so beautifully put. Thank you for sharing that scene with us, Amanda. So, Linda, how would you like this movie to be seen? I know this is not your movie. It really is Amanda's production. But how would you like this movie seen by prospective patients? What do you want to have somebody who can't afford fertility treatment? What do you want them to understand? What would, what message? You've been pretty clear, respectfully about the contest, but what would you like somebody who can't afford fertility treatment to know? What would you like them to know that maybe the movie covered and maybe the movie didn't cover?
I don't know about looking at it from a financial point of view. Unfortunately, because IVF treatments, when they're not covered by insurance, are going to be 5 figures, somewhere between, $15,000, $20,000. And for most individuals right now, if I asked most of the people watching this, if they have, disposable $15,000 to $20,000, most people do not. They do not have that. Some have access to it in ways that they wish they didn't have to mortgage their home or empty out their 401k or these kind of things. So most people, this is not affordable, and they have to use means that normally none of us would think about doing, that we would be crushed. If I told you, go empty your savings account right now for whatever reason, it would crush you because you wouldn't have the security, you would question what you're doing. But at least if you had an end game, if you had something at the end. But here you don't, like Amanda brought up earlier. You only have it's a gamble and you only have a choice. This movie to me was so important. It's what I do every day, but was so important for the 7 out of 8 people who don't suffer from this yet. We all know people who are infertile. That's a given. We all do. We just don't always know we do. And so I think it's really important for people to understand the kind of suffering that patients with infertility go through, because like Amanda said earlier, sometimes it's looked at as though it's a choice, or we're doing this to have reproductive choices, and there's a selfishness involved because there's so many unwanted children. So there is this stigma. And so I really hope that we reach this, the 8th person, that 1 out of 8, they get it. They know. It's the other people who I want to understand.
And I'm going to take it a step further. How about the people who have no savings account they can go to? How about somebody who's working a minimum wage job? While we have medical care, fertility care that is accessible in this country, when we talk about accessible, I think we have to be really careful about what that means. Because if it's unaffordable, it doesn't matter that the fertility clinic is down the block. If I can't afford to walk in and I don't have a savings account. I mean, I went through infertility treatment a very long time ago, but I have to tell you, we couldn't beg, borrow, or steal it. And I see, we see patients here all the time who leave the practice without a baby because their financial resources have run out. And again, I'm going to say that these are the people who can afford to walk in. But the truth
Right.
is that this is an issue that when we talk about insurance coverage and all of those kind of things, how do you think, I'm going to jump back to Amanda, how do you feel that the movie has advanced in fertility awareness, fertility treatment, and coverage, and in what way, Amanda?
Well, we had a partnership with Resolve, the National Infertility Association, who've been incredibly supportive of the film. And we've used different tools. We had community screenings that were sort of outreach screenings, and we specifically reached out to the infertility community, but also encouraged them to bring other people from their life that maybe didn't know what they were going through to try to reach that fertile community that we needed to reach. And I think one thing that's important to me about the gamble aspect of it is let's say that person with a minimum wage job gets a loan to do IVF. I think it's very important for them to understand before they put their money on the table what the odds are that they're facing, and to help educate people that this is not a procedure. IVF is not really a one-stop shop. It's a course of treatment. And I think that the film really shows that, like how many attempts it takes, even the happy endings in the film, these people went through hell to get there. Sure. And they spent a lot of money, a lot of time, and multiple attempts. And that was sort of my experience of my own first IVF failure, was that I just didn't realize that. I just had no idea. I thought, and I think it was partly just because I knew people that it had worked for on the first try. And obviously there are those people, and they're very lucky, and that's fantastic. But we're talking about a national average, if all ages are considered, a success rate of about 30%. And you have to know that going in. And, baseball players know that when they're going to hit a ball. They know the batting averages are low, and you have to be a fantastic hitter to knock it out of the park. Sure. But if you're a patient and you're spending your hard-earned cash and you're not aware of that, then you're just ill-informed. In terms of the insurance, I think Resolve has been very targeted in their approach, that it's an uphill battle, especially with the current administration, to expect insurance companies to add more coverage for the average American. It's just not a priority in the United States of America right now. But private insurers, even if you're at a minimum wage job, if you have health insurance through your employer, that is a place where we have seen some improvement, and that we actually had handouts at all of our screenings, and we try to use our Facebook and website to help educate people about. Resolve has very specific white paper instructions on how to go to your employer and ask them to add insurance for infertility onto your employer's healthcare. Now, obviously, that's not going to help everybody. It certainly wouldn't have helped me. I'm self-employed and I live in California. That's not a mandated state. But I guess for me, the ultimate thing is the more we raise awareness, and I agree with Linda, I think it's important to raise awareness outside of the infertility community first and foremost. And that's a very hard group to get to. Raising awareness is the first step, and having that empathy and that understanding, and addressing head on that judgment, which I heard all the time, and we'll just say it, everybody, why don't they just adopt? What is wrong with these people? Why don't they just adopt? And the just implies that somehow adoption is easy and cheap. And we could do a whole other seminar about adoption and foster care, and we need to, because there are many children in foster care that need homes. But it's just so much more complicated than that. And adoption is not what it used to be, and it's a somewhat broken system. So there is not an easy fix for people with infertility who can't afford IVF. Adoption may not be an easy route for them either. Either way, it's a tough battle.
So I'm going to jump in here and just let everybody out there know, Resolve, the National Infertility Organization, has been around for at least 30 years, and they do some incredible work. RMACT has been going to their advocacy day down in Washington for the last 4 years, and we were state captains last year, actually very, very pleased to do the work. I also want to do a call out to Resolve New England, which is an organization obviously in New England, in the New England area, and they do some incredible work. The Walk of Hope actually is coming up on September 17th, and there are walks all over the country. So if you're interested, please take a look. Resolve and Resolve New England are both patient not-for-profit organizations that do just incredible work. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to toot Connecticut's horn. Not only are we a state mandate, not only do we have a great state mandate, but we actually just passed the first fertility preservation bill in the country, and it's been quickly followed. So, you know, there is some incredible work being done out there, and I really appreciate being able to give Resolve a plug here.
And Lisa, the September 17th
yes.
Walk of Hope, where is that one?
All over the country. They're going to be all over the country. And as a matter of fact, instead of going up to Resolve New England, I'm gathering a group of anybody who wants to join me, and we can walk between 1 and 10 miles. I don't know what the walks are. Some of them are a lot of them are 1 mile. Some of them are 5K. I just like walking, so I'll probably do a 10-mile walk that day. But I actually
I was going to say, I know that there have been other dates in other cities, but for anybody that's doing a Walk of Hope, I would happily send them a stack of postcards with Vegas Baby info on it to help spread the word and raise awareness through those events.
Wonderful. So I feel like we covered all the questions that I had wanted to ask. What kind of final thoughts would you want to leave us with, Lisa?
I guess I would just encourage people to watch the movie and to continue to spread the word and to talk about it, both with their friends who are dealing with infertility and their friends who are not dealing with infertility. And I would embrace people to get out there with their stories, and other clinics as well, to not be afraid to talk about it in a public way. I know, Dr. Scheer for years even, and now still has a discussion board where he'll talk about it with people, and he'll do Facebook Live broadcasts where he'll talk about it. So I guess, my final thought is to just keep talking, keep focusing on it, and more good will come. It won't solve all the world's ills, but it will continue to do more good for more people.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Lisa. Linda, what would you like to leave us with?
Oh, I think Lisa summed it up great. I agree with that. I think that because Amanda was right with how people view infertility, and a lot of it is because we don't talk about it. Infertile people don't want to talk about it either, because it seems like when I want to talk about it, my friends don't want to talk about it, and when I really don't want to talk about it anymore, they seem to be plying me with questions, so I just don't tell anybody anymore. It's pretty much how people deal with it. And the public doesn't know how to deal with it, and they don't know what to say or what not to say, and they usually end up saying the wrong thing. The reality is there is no right answer. You just need to be there. You just need to be a shoulder. If somebody wants to talk about it, they do. But it's just a stigma. To be childless is to be as if something's wrong with you.
Yes.
And so I'm not a woman. He's not a man. There's something about us that's not normal. And that's very difficult. And so the more this gets out, the more that will dissipate. And so that's my big, the documentary is providing that, I think, for us.
Wonderful. Thanks, Linda. Amanda?
I think word of mouth is key for this. I think we need to break the silence around infertility. We're all echoing the same thing. One thing that I just thought might be interesting for your viewers to note, since we haven't talked about it, is that the SURE contest is no longer happening. Mm-hmm. There are some other clinics that are still doing this, but as we've mentioned, there are other granting organizations. The one you mentioned, there's also Baby Quest on the West Coast. And the Resolve advocacy is really important to continuing to try to improve the situation. But first and foremost, I think word of mouth, and whenever people feel ready to speak openly about their experience, I think the more they speak, the better. And I think the film is a great tool to start a conversation, and it's provocative. As we've noticed today, like people have very strong opinions about the contest, and then you can get deeper to talk more just about the sort of more universal issues of the desire and loss that are everyday experiences for people dealing with this. And the film just launched on Netflix in July. We're just beginning this, but we really need people to follow us on Facebook at Vegas Baby Film and check out the film on Netflix, Amazon, or YouTube, not YouTube, iTunes, to help spread the word. Probably, if it's on YouTube, I should take it down. I think it might be.
Well, what I'd sort of like to leave us with is, what we understand about infertility is that 1 in 8 people, 1 in 8 couples do face the challenge of infertility. That we do understand. I guess for me, I would really want my fertile friends to be watching this movie even more than any of our patients or infertile patients or my infertile friends. They already get it. They get it. I would want my fertile friends to understand that, as we've said many times, this is not a lifestyle choice. This is reproductive disease. Like any other disease, you know, I love the fact that we're using the word fertile rather than infertile in some ways, because we don't say I am cancer, but we do say I am infertile, and as though it's a static thing. The only thing is that as we move away from using the word infertility and we try to move away from the word disease, the truth is infertility is reproductive disease. And when we own that, then insurance companies have more of a reason to be covering it. So I really, that's just my little plug. So I can't tell you how much I appreciated all of you joining us here tonight. In watching the movie, I laughed, I cried, I wanted to throw things at the TV a few times watching it on Netflix. I nodded. It was, my husband sat down and watched it with me, and this is now 30 years since we've been in treatment, 25 years since we've been in treatment, and he's not a highly demonstrative man. Hi, honey, I'm sure you're not watching this, so it's okay. But, he leaned over and he grabbed my hand and he held on very tight. And it is kind of interesting, infertility is also a life-changing moment in our lives, whether that moment is truly a moment and you get pregnant on your first cycle, or that moment is 6 years later if you get pregnant, all of those kind of things. So thank you very much. I don't know if there are any questions. I have this, I'm not going to call out my wonderful team, but I will just say, RMACT, you rock. You really rock, you guys. And anything that you all want to add or want me to add? No? Okay, well, thank you so much.
I have one
Yes.
thought. One
Yes.
thought, just because I know we
Yes.
haven't talked about this at all, and I love that we're talking about the disease of infertility and coverage. But I will say from my personal experience, and this is a little bit tangential from the film, although Rosalinda dealt with this too, is just how much of age-related infertility is an issue in our culture. And for me,
Yes.
that was a primary issue for me. And then we also had male factor infertility. But that is a thing that I was really surprised in my circle of like highly educated women. We all, in my generation, really bought into this idea that we could have it all. And we focused on our careers and delayed having children. And so that is a conversation that I think is really important to continue. I don't think it addresses everyone with infertility, because like the people in our film, a lot of these people had diagnoses from a very young age, but age affects them too. Age affects us all. And I think there's this post-feminist conundrum that we don't want to discourage women from pursuing their careers. But I think in some ways the film is a cautionary tale to younger women and millennials to think twice about this. And just as long as they know they're making a choice by delaying, that you're taking a risk, and I don't think egg freezing is the solution to it all. I think it's a really interesting part of the conversation. But as our technology advances and our culture advances, these questions are not going to get easier. If anything, I think they're going to get more complicated.
And I want to add to that, we have a test called the anti-Müllerian hormone test, which can be done at any time of a woman's cycle and at any age. And I personally would love to see that the first time a woman visits an OBGYN, whether it's to get birth control because she's about to be sexually active, but that this should be part of their yearly checkup like anything else. An AMH test. Why does a 19-year-old need to know their AMH? Well, you know what? Just like we plan our educations, just like we plan our travel, just like we try to buy our homes, why aren't we planning on our families as well? Why aren't we looking ahead and saying, well, my AMH at 19, it's great. I don't have to really worry about this. You know what? At 22, maybe it's not so great. But the point is, why aren't we planning our families? And I will tell you a funny story. When I was with the American Fertility Association, now Path to Parenthood, um, a major organization who I have a lot of respect for got really angry at us because they felt that we were telling women to have babies before they were ready to have babies, which was not our message. Our message was, however, that your fertility precipitously drops at 35. It does not drop at 40. In fact, our fertility precipitously drops even at 25. But you know, the saddest thing that could that our doctors talk about, and I hear Dr. Leonderis and Dr. Richland, Dr. Hurwitz, all of our doctors here talk about, one of the saddest things is when they get a woman who is in her 40s, which is not old, but when you're talking about fertility, it is advanced. When they get somebody in their 40s who they really could have helped at 35, 36, 37, 38, but can't now, or can't as easily now, or it may be much more involved now. Now, does that mean that she should have had the baby earlier? Well, nobody can answer that. But how about her just knowing that how about just every single woman in this world, I'm not highfalutin here or anything, but how about every woman in the world really do understand their own fertility and when it drops and when it is easier to become pregnant? And a
Well,
great place to
you know
start.
what?
A
I was
great
going to
place
say,
to start is with the AMH test.
and even before that, I mean, I had sex ed when I was 12. I understand we got to focus on birth control and prevention, but couldn't we give 90 minutes to infertility in sex ed? Isn't this part of understanding our bodies? So I think the AMH test at 19 is great. Let's start even sooner and get this in our education system sooner. But again, people have to give a crap to do that. And right now, we're still on that tipping point of trying to help people understand and give a crap. So that's what the documentary is all about.
And unfortunately, most of our news right now comes from Hollywood. That's where you're learning about how people deal with fertility issues.
Yes, and that you can get pregnant at 50 if you're Janet Jackson. And, you know, and I will just say our celebrities are entitled to their privacy and not disclosing whether they've used donor egg or donor sperm or gestational surrogate. They are entitled to that the way any other patient is, but it is misleading at best. So I'm going to leave you there. So Lisa Rosenthal from Reproductive Medicine Associates of Connecticut. Good if I at least say my own company's name correctly. Linda and Lisa and Amanda, you were a pleasure to spend time with. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lisa. I appreciate it.
Everybody.
Yeah,
Thanks
absolutely.
for joining us.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.